Have you ever looked at someone and felt absolutely certain you knew exactly who they were? Maybe a new friend, a coworker, or even a partner. Here's the terrifying truth. You have no idea what they're thinking, and you have no idea what they're capable of. Welcome back to First Sermon, where we explore the dark side of human nature. Before we dive into this chilling story, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you these deep dives. And I promise by the end of this, you'll be locking your doors a little tighter tonight. This all started about 4 or 5 years ago. Life had been wearing me and my girlfriend Stacy down. The daily grind was just exhausting, so Stacy suggested we rent a cabin out in the woods for a few days. Escape, breathe. The only problem, money was tight, really tight, so she floated another idea. Invite my best friend Randy and his girlfriend to split the cost. A couple's getaway. I loved it. Randy was immediately on board, and we found a perfect little winter cabin with a fireplace.
Honestly, I don't really
We
care,
booked
do
it for
you?
the end of the month and spent weeks planning meals and games. Then, less than a week before the trip, Randy and his girlfriend broke up. Badly, Stacy and I panicked. We couldn't afford the trip alone, but it wasn't fair to keep his money. When I called Randy to offer a refund, he told me not to worry. He insisted we go and have a romantic getaway, just the two of us. Stacy was thrilled. For one day we were excited again, but the very next day Randy called back. He'd found someone else to come with us. A new girl, a rebound. Her name was Lucy. I told him no. Stacy agreed. We didn't want some random stranger in a remote cabin with us. But Randy begged. He offered to pay for our entire portion of the trip, promising Lucy was cool and we would love her. Stacy and I were not happy. We saw disaster written all over it, but we decided to make the best of it. The weekend finally arrived. We carpooled in my truck. Lucy seemed sweet, quiet, shy. Stacy and I are not shy. We're loud and a little annoying. We spent the whole drive trying to get Lucy to talk, but she barely said a word. By the time we reached the cabin, I barely knew what her voice sounded like. The first night started fine. We sat by the fireplace and Stacy brought out Uno. We love Uno. It's simple and fun. Everyone agreed to play, and that's when we saw the first red flag. Stacy called out Uno, meaning she had one card left. Lucy looked at her and this quiet, mousy voice suddenly filled with rage. She started screaming that Stacy must have cheated. There was no way. We all laughed, thinking she was joking, but that made it so much worse. Lucy went insane, screaming, accusing, throwing a full toddler tantrum over a card game with people she barely knew. Even when Randy tried to calm her down, she threw her cards and stormed out of the room. We laughed it off, but later that night, Stacy made dinner, and Lucy acted like nothing had happened. That was the second red flag. During dinner, she started oversharing graphic, private details about her and Randy's personal time. Things I will not repeat for Randy's sake. He was mortified. I tried to crack jokes and change the subject, but the damage was done. That night, Stacy woke me up and told me to listen. Lucy and Randy were arguing in their room. We couldn't make out the words, but the tone was vicious. We pretended not to hear it. The next day was uneventful, but Randy seemed distant. We barely saw Lucy. But then the second night came. I woke up to Randy standing over my bed. I almost screamed. He looked terrified. He asked if he could stay in our room and lock the door. Apparently, he'd woken up to Lucy standing at the foot of the bed, just staring at him. When he asked what she was doing, she shrugged and said she was watching him sleep, just in case. Then she walked out. He waited, but she didn't come back, so he went to check on her. That's when he saw something on her side of the bed. He moved the blanket, a large knife. He snuck through the dark cabin. In the living room, he saw Lucy humming and skipping around like she was dancing, or sleepwalking, but worse. When the floor creaked, she stopped. She turned toward him and in this ominous, hollow voice said, "I see you." Then she turned and kept humming. He ran to our room and locked the door. We sat there listening to her pace around the cabin. Then we heard the front door slam. Randy looked out the window. Lucy was walking into the freezing forest in just a t-shirt and shorts. He ran to check his room. The knife was gone. Stacy wanted to go after her, but Randy was begging us not to. We argued for a minute, and then we heard the front door open and close again. Lucy was back, stomping down the hall. Still humming, we stayed locked in that room all night. At 6 a.m. we heard her washing dishes. We walked out and she greeted us like nothing had happened. Like the knife, the screaming, the sleepwalking, none of it had happened. Stacy and I tried to rationalize it. Sleepwalking, stress, a bad reaction to something. But Randy was convinced something darker was at play. 20 minutes later, he texted me to come to his room alone. He was packing his bag and had moved Lucy's bag. A large knife fell out, the same knife from last night. I put it back. We drove home in total silence, knowing that knife was in her bag the whole time. Randy ghosted her after that. She never tried to contact him again. Stacy has looked for Lucy online for years, social media, inmate records, everything. Nothing, no record of her exists. It was clearly a fake name. So the question haunts me. What did she want? Was she planning to hurt him? I have no idea. But whoever she was, she had dark intentions. And for whatever reason, she didn't act on them. Now, you might think that's the end of the story, but this is Stoic Code, and things are about to get much stranger. Because a few years later, I found myself in another cabin nightmare. See, I've always been an introvert. My anxiety got so bad that I would rent secluded cabins just to be alone. 2 years of this. And during one of those weekends, something happened that still gives me chills. I drove 2 hours to a remote cabin, hiked, read, went to bed early. The next morning, I went for a long hike in the woods. And I heard something behind me, twigs snapping, footsteps, but every time I turned around, there was nothing. The paranoia got so bad I cut the hike short and went back to the cabin. That night, I had a few drinks to calm down. Around 11 p.m., I heard a knock at the door. I looked through the small window, nobody there. I walked away, and then another knock. This time, a man was standing there, clean cut, 6 feet tall, athletic build, a full suit and tie. At 11 p.m., in the middle of the woods, he looked like he was ready for a board meeting, not a nighttime stroll. I asked what he wanted through the door. He paused for way too long, then said he was lost. He'd been walking for hours, looking for his girlfriend. Could he come inside to call for help? His voice had zero emotion, none. I told him to back up and wait at the end of the driveway. I would call someone for him. He paused again. Then he said something was outside. He needed to hide inside the cabin. I told him I was calling the police. As I walked away, he started pounding on the door, aggressively. I ran back and started screaming at him, and then I heard him laugh. I looked out the window. His face was pressed against the glass, inches from mine. In a calm, quiet voice, he said, "Come on, Victor, just open the door already." Victor is my name. A complete stranger in a suit in the middle of the woods knew my name. I froze, then dialed 911. When I looked back, he was gone. The police came 15 minutes later. As we walked to his car, the officer stopped. My tires had been slashed, all of them. The cop drove me to a hotel. I never got answers. I never will. But I still get chills thinking about that man and how he knew my name. Now, let me take you to the final piece of this puzzle. 6 months ago, my father passed away. We didn't have a good relationship. He wasn't a bad guy, but we were just completely different. In his will, he left me his cabin. Friends joked it was his last joke on me, but I think he wanted me to sell it. To do that, I had to clean it out, so I decided to stay there one last night. A goodbye. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It smelled like death, not a dead body, but just rot. The cabin looked exactly as I remembered from when I was 10. Old couches, old bookshelves. I cleaned for hours downstairs, and all day I kept hearing rustling above me. The attic, there was a pull-down ladder in the back hallway. I opened it and climbed up. The smell was overwhelming. The attic was filled with trash, wrappers, beer cans, garbage everywhere. I grabbed some trash and went back down, planning to finish the next day. That night, I slept in my father's old bed. I woke up to more rustling coming from the attic. I went to investigate, and the attic ladder was hanging down again. I was sure I had closed it. There was a fresh snack wrapper on the floor. Annoyed, I cleaned it up, then sat on the couch in the dark living room. I turned on a small, low orange lamp, enough to see by, and then I noticed something in the corner, a blanket covering something next to the recliner. I didn't remember that blanket from my cleaning. I stood up and walked closer. I saw the bottom of a boot sticking out, and then the whole blanket shifted. Someone was breathing under there, hiding. I didn't wait. I grabbed my keys and my phone and sprinted to my car. As I backed down the driveway, a mangy, terrifying man ran out the front door. He didn't chase me. He just stood there in front of the cabin, watching me leave. I called the police. They said a squatter had probably been living there for warmth. Given the smell, maybe for a year or more. By the time police arrived, he was gone. I never went back inside that cabin. I hired someone to clean it out without telling them anything, and I sold it as is. I hope the new owners are happy there, but I also hope they never have to deal with a surprise visitor in the middle of the night. If you made it this far, you are the reason Fear Sermon exists. Thank you. And here's my ask: don't just watch this story and scroll away. Leave a comment. Tell me, would you have opened the door for the man in the suit? Would you have stayed in that cabin after finding the knife? Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that we never truly know what people are capable of. Like and subscribe if you want more stories that will make you think twice about who you trust. Stay safe, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.